Hey, Corey with Creative Habitats, going over my design ideas with you. So I have about four different design iterations on this. So we're going to go through those one by one. One of the first things that I recognized was in the center, we have the very cliche tree with a couple bushes around it. And it would be much better to have open space without this yard space interrupted in here. So what I recommend doing is that we move this tree more over to the corner and then take the roses and just double up instead of having a thin line of roses, give that a little bit more fullness. So that was one thing that hit me. Let's talk more about the main areas that you asked me to address, which are these two corners. So the first thing in my drawing, I've moved the tree over here to the corner. Not too fond. If we do that, I'm not too fond of this holly. Even if this is here, this holly should be farther out because it wants to get big. It's too close to the house. One of the things I've also done, and you'll see how this part goes, repeats the ideas of what we have in here. So I've created a bed around this. There is a boulder and a short wall that goes through here. This is an example of a fieldstone wall. Now, we could also do something a little bit more modern with retaining wall block, but this is one of many options that we could do in that location. So I've added evergreen shrubs. The first thing that comes to my mind is some sort of an encore azalea. And then I have a generic placement of a tree in here. There are not black trees, but there are trees like Japanese maples, like crepe myrtles, or vitex, or chionanthus, or serviceberry. Any of those trees would do well in this placement. So, example of encore azalea, that's one thing that we could put through here. So now I've added a layer of perennials to this. Um, in here, I have my Hymenocalyx. This is lantana, and this is maybe either verbena or dianthus or catmint napata. This is an example of dianthus. It's going to bloom like what you see here in spring. The rest of the year, even throughout the winter, you're going to have this tight blue-green foliage at the base of that wall. This is catmint napata. This is a summer bloomer, and in the wintertime, this will go away. And here is an example of a low-growing lantana. And one of my favorite, this is a type of an amaryllis. It's called Peruvian daffodil. It is not a daffodil, but the foliage on it is very beautiful. And then it blooms like what you see here in the summertime, and it makes for a great cut flower. If your neighbor wants to extend this over, I would take this and simply repeat it over here a little bit further. Let's move to the other side of the house. This would essentially be a repeat of what you have on the other side, looking similar to this. Now, in this particular situation, I've made the recommendation of a pot instead of a boulder. So it's an option. And different colored pots. I made the lantana here and the verbena there just so we get some contrast in those two things. But lots of options in this. And with this, all I've done is extend it out, include the little island, the cliche island bed with a tree, and wrapped and tied all of this together. Here's another idea. I just started playing with it as designs. Um, I'm going to use a word that you'll probably never hear a landscaper say, liquidambar. And as a landscape architect, you know what that means. But I'm not talking about a normal liquidambar sweet gum, but a slender silhouette sweet gum. No, it does not have sweet gum balls. But this is an example of what that looks like. I was up in Vanderbilt and saw this tree everywhere. It's pretty ubiquitous up there. But you get some really interesting fall color, and you don't have to mess with the sweet gum balls. But it's an interesting one. If you don't like that, then we could also do something like a tree-formed ligustrum in here. And one of the things that I've changed up between the first design and this is I've done a little bit more of a focus on using ornamental grasses. One of those, well, there's a tree-formed ligustrum and another one. But one of those would be blue gama grass, like what you see here. And then there's some other different ornamental grasses. But if that interests you at all, of this being an ornamental grass, then we can pursue that in more detail and see what's available out there. And this was my third idea for a design concept. I've added another boulder in the center, and what we're looking at with this is a boulder with either catmint or dianthus or verbena in these two spots. This is dahlia. It is a plant that I think, for the beauty of it, is way underused. And this would be something like a coreopsis or a lantana in there. Now, I also wanted to experiment with the idea of using Carolina jessamine in here. The reason why it is evergreen and it blooms really beautifully well in the springtime. So that is a suggestion on the second level of what we could put in there. And then this iteration this is a Camellia japonica. This is in bloom right now. And underneath here, this is Camellia sasanqua, and it is in bloom in the fall. So you spread out, you've got the jessamine coming in early spring, the dianthus in the spring, or the other ones in the summer. This would be in bloom in the summer, and then now and fall. So those are a couple of different concepts. Though this is the dahlia right here, just striking, beautiful foliage. A lot of people aren't familiar with this. This is Carolina jessamine. If it was 20 degrees out or 120, it's going to have its leaves, but these blooms are about to come out in any time now. Now, typically people use this as a trailing plant, but as long as it's maintained, it does really well as a ground cover as well. And oh, I brought this up to review the camellias. This is an example of a Camellia japonica and then Camellia sasanqua. We have, I guess, late winter, early spring blooms and fall blooms. And these are a couple other plants that, as I was brainstorming this, I just thought would be really, really amazing. Monarda. I love this plant. Bees, hummingbirds, they swarm around this. It is a fantastic multi-blooming, long-blooming plant that nature loves. Disco bell hibiscus, that would be another one that would be really interesting. My in-laws have this plant up in Huntsville, and it always comes back. And I've used this in a number of landscapes. Really interesting one. Of course, you got Rudbeckia and purple coneflower. Those are other options. And lastly, this is Homestead Purple Verbena. So those are a couple of my thoughts. They are there to stimulate a discussion, and pick out what you like and talk to me, and we'll figure out where to go with this from there. Thank you so much, Corey with Creative Habitats.